Welcome back to another episode of The Deliberate Dropout. We got another fun topic. Bright and early Saturday morning, we're gonna riff on some fun topics today. Today's topic, Lucho and I keep thinking about, like, what are the things you should think through as a person who is considering dropping out, or you have dropped out. What are some of those important milestones? Today is a fun topic that's not limited to just the person who is dropping out. I think this is relevant to anybody that is in that kind of the first innings of your life and career. But what should be the goal of your 20s? I know that at different points in time in my early 20s and late teens, the playbook that I had going out into the world was like, once I start my career, I want to make as much money as possible. That's where I started. I think that was wrong. I think that's where a lot of people start, is they go after either the income or the status or things like that. My point of view is the external motivators tend to be the wrong goals for your 20s, but I want you to open it up with that preface. That's where I'm going to be coming from this. So kick us off, Lucho. What do you feel like is the proper goal for your 20s? And, then we can go back and forth and dive into this a little bit more.
Absolutely, bro. I mean, I'm only 40% of the way there, right? I'm 24 years old. So honestly, when I look at how I started my 20s, though, I feel like the big thing, when I look at the macro, right? And you could, I'd love to hear your take on this as well. Like, how you start your 20s and how you end, I feel like that is like a metamorphosis, man. Like, you come in a little more dependent on your parents. Maybe you're like halfway through college, or you're trying to figure out your career, your entry level. By the end, it could be so, depending on like the work ethic and what you did in that decade, like you could end up in a completely different situation. How I started my 20s, I was big on confidence, because I knew I dropped out. I was already like, I'm hearing all this shit from everyone, so I'm already, all right, let me build some confidence here.
Yeah.
Let me learn a skill, and let me just make sure that I'm the best at my craft, period. That's the direction I took. I took a lot of low entry level jobs. It wasn't even for the money. And you brought up a great point. Like, it's not about the status in the beginning. It's not about the paycheck. It really isn't, to be honest, in your first couple years in your 20s. My big thing is confidence. You build confidence, by mid 20s, or even like by the end of it, you're in a better place. What
yeah. Awesome. And that's a great point. And I think that, I think the power of compound interest is such a miraculous thing when you think about it applied to a career.
Yes.
And you think about doing the right things first during your late teens and 20s. And again, you're probably not going to see all the dividends of this during that window of time. I think you can definitely start to see some dividends in your mid to late 20s. If you do the first handful of years right, you can do that faster. But I think it's more about like, what freedom and flexibility and opportunities do you have going into your 30s, your 40s, because of all the work you did in the early innings. And so I am literally on the victory lap. I'm about to kiss goodbye to my 20s, but I can tell you that I've learned so much. I know that when I came in, like I kind of teased out earlier, when I came into my 20s, it was status, it was income, it was I want to break out of where I'm from. I want to break out. Like, I want to be able to go, I felt like I was a big fish in a very small pond, maybe like a medium-sized goldfish in a tiny fish bowl. Like, graduated with 24 people. We was like in a town that had a population of 300, like, like everybody was top of class, in a class that small, but then I went to college, and then I went and got in my first jobs. And I think that to some degree, it turned out okay, because I was chasing after, like, trying to be the best in whatever environment I was in. I think that I had the wrong motives and the wrong perspective going into that. But reaching to be the best did force me to work my ass off. And it did force me to, show up early and stay late, and to get involved in tons of projects that I might not have otherwise done. I think my motive was always like, hey, this will look good on my resume. It wasn't like, I'm uniquely interested in this. So that's the insight that that's kind of informing what I would suggest is, I think it's probably even more valuable to to shake off kind of the status and the income and like the extrinsic things. And instead of just like doing things because you think they're going to be good for your resume, go find something you're uniquely interested in. And this is not me saying go find your passion. I think that's mostly stupid advice, because like you're gonna have different passions and interests at different points in your life. But like, what's the one thing you can't shake? You're so interested about, you want to read every book, you want to listen to every podcast. How can you begin to build some confidence, begin to build a brand, get some experiences, build somewhat of a network in that arena? And, for me now, reflecting back on my 20s and teens, knowing that, about halfway through, I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I knew I wanted to start my own business or run a business and be in that position. And
yep,
I would say my late 20s, I got to do all of those things. I've done all those things. I didn't think I was going to be able to do that until my 30s, 40s. And I think that this is my next piece of advice I want to kick it back to you, is that I think I spent the first 7 years from probably like 18 to 25 thinking that there were hoops you had to jump through in a certain order in order to be able to even access things that you might want to do down the road. Starting with like, I wanted to go to medical school, then I wanted to be involved in business. So I thought I had to go to law school, get an MBA. And like by my mid-20s, I realized how much wrong thinking it was to go out in the world and think that you have to have permission to do what you want. And I think that big change was like following what I'm interested in and realizing you don't need permission to get started. Immediately unlocked opportunities that I thought were going to be reserved for later in life. And so I think if I would have had the same lack of care about what other people thought, and the same courage in the first half of my 20s, where I wasn't waiting for permission, that I did in the second, the latter half, I'm jealous of where that version of myself is right now. Like that version of myself would have been kicking ass and taking names much sooner. So those are some insights that I think, just reflecting back.
Ooh, we got a lot to unpack there, man. A lot to unpack, right? One thing, that's a lot of information. One thing I want to touch on first. So you mentioned the law of like the compounding effect, like
yep.
in terms of your habits, in terms of your career. I want to dissect that first. Like
yep.
Like I said, I'm only 40% there, bro. I'm 24. Like, I think you have a lot of wisdom. I think you have a lot of value, especially where you are in your career now. And like, there's a lot of hurdles that you had to go through that a lot of people don't see. And that's everybody. I'm not like everybody, to get to any type of success or any type of maturity or wisdom, you go through hurdles, right? What would you say was what was the key difference maker? What was that 1% that like really compounded for you in your 20s? Was it a morning ritual? Was it something that you did every morning? Like, for example, Roger Federer in tennis, everybody makes fun of him because the guy has like this weird OCD like ritual that he does when he steps on the tennis court. Did you have something in your 20s where it compounded for you, where I did this every day, and in 10 years, this is what led to massive growth?
Oh, I have a couple things. They're all kind of like one topic. And so this is me coming out of college, completely unsatisfied with my life and just completely more confused than when I started college. I have no idea what I want to do. But I became very fascinated with, a few different topics like history and econ and philosophy and like all these kind of like big thinkers. And I just went down every single rabbit trail I could. And I started, like, I remember, that my senior year of college and the first couple years out there, I was reading, at least 100 books a year. I didn't have, I didn't have a lot of obligations. So I had time to just like sit around and just read all day. Those, especially like that last semester of college when I was just like wasting time. And so for me, it was like, okay, here are ideas that I'm really interested in. I'm going to read every book I can. But then the next step was like, I'm going to go find anybody who's talking about these ideas in the real world. And so I had some early mentors who were like doing, like just profound thinkers, like, this very cool entrepreneur that I had the opportunity to spend a lot of time with, and like just, poured into me. I didn't work for him. It was just somebody that I knew. And I worked at, a couple of opportunities I had early in my career when I was working at the Foundation for Economic Education, which is like introduced me to a whole new pool of other people who were doing cool things and like actually building businesses in the real world, but they were applying these ideas that I was interested in the real world. And so
got you. Yep.
It was the point there. You don't have to be interested in the same things as I was to be successful or whatever for it to work out. But it's like, figure out the things that you're obsessed about, the topics and things that you want to learn, and learn everything you can, soak it all up, and don't just like fill your head with book knowledge though. Take the next step and figure out like, okay, if these ideas are interesting, if they're actually useful, how can I apply them in the real world? And so go find people who are doing that are applying them in the real world, and put yourself in proximity to them so that you can actually get a better framework for how to make ideas useful in context of getting closer to the life you want.
Got it. So you would say you literally, I'm trying to like get the big picture here. So you were like, yo, I'm interested in this, and this. And you would just dive deep, find the expert, find a mentor, and just dive deep in that one topic. And then just keep repeating until you found what ultimately, like what led to the passion and the purpose and all that? Or is that?
Yeah, I mean, more or less, but it was also kind of this idea of radical escape. So like, there was a worldview that I was kind of forging. And I think today it was like this idea of like value creation. The best way to change the world is like being valuable to other people. And the best way to get what you want is by helping other people get what they want. And it was like this early mindset shift that I had to take from like, what you get in school or whatever, which is like, you got to get the good grades. That's the way to succeed. It was so stupid. But for me, it was like this big shift of like being someone who's valuable to other people instead of being someone who's impressive to other people. That's a radically different way of looking at the world. And so for me, it was less about like, I want to find somebody who's interested in econ or in philosophy or these ideas that, that was part of it, but it was more so like, find people who are living out this viewpoint that I'm trying to get validation that this is what I believe. Because I didn't know, I didn't have all my ideas figured out. But I remember like there were a couple early jobs where I felt like the people that I was working under and surrounding myself with had a wrong way of thinking about the world. Their viewpoint was not about being valuable. It was still, it was that more old school belief set that I was trying to shake off, which was like how to be impressive and like be, high status.
External.
And for me, it was like, I was originally attracted to those jobs for the wrong reason. And as I was kind of having these like, these epiphanies about a better way to go about building a career in life, I wanted to get away from people who had a set of beliefs and a kind of an underlying view of the world that was not serving me. I had to discard those beliefs. And so I know that this seems somewhat abstract, but it's like, don't go work for somebody who's like a crook or who has like, they're like their goal in doing business is not to help other people. It's truly to just like, do things wrong, to not be valuable. It's motivated by anything other than like, I want to build the most valuable business. I want to create value. If it's not about creating value, then like, that's probably not a good place for you to start your career, where you're really trying to make the shift from like job to career, where you're like, those early career jobs, not to just get too far off track here, but those early career jobs, as opposed to like wage jobs I was working, those early career jobs, every single one of them that I went into, this was not by intention, but this is just how I learned. It was like, I truly walked into them like they were an apprenticeship. Like I wanted to go learn from the person who was running the business, because it's like, that's how I'm going to get better faster. It's like, learn from these people. And if you're in a situation early in your career where you are trying to soak up everything and you realize the person that you are apprenticing, your mentor, is living out a set of values that you don't believe in, get the hell out of there. Go find
Absolutely.
somebody
Absolutely. Yep.
who's living out the path that you want to be on. That's going to be a better way for you to get where you want to be than trying to get to a destination that the person who's leading you is not headed toward.
Absolutely. The core values, if they have different core values, different set of beliefs, you're that's a dead end road right there. So I guess another thing that I'm interested in, like every time you reach the next level, whatever that was for you, every time you reach that next level, did you face resistance? Because think like, let's say you broke a crazy new level of income, or you just, you got a title that, or like you reached a certain career milestone. I feel like there's something like in for me, I'm still young. I'm not like, I'm still building my career, let's say. Like, I feel like there's resistance. Like people around you are not, you're already different. You've dropped out. I'm not saying you, I'm saying like somebody that's, so, I'm saying like, if you are on that journey and you're looking for career growth, like sometimes in your environment, you have nothing to validate whatever you're doing. Like sometimes it's like your own limiting beliefs will bring you down, because it's like, yo, what are you doing? Chill out. Yo, what are you doing? Chill out. Come back down to earth. You might, don't leave the tribe type of thing.
Yeah.
Did you face that in your, like, now that you look back, exiting your 20s?
Oh, absolutely. And I think anybody who's trying to achieve some level of accelerated growth in their life compared to like the status quo for your peers,
yes,
you're going to meet resistance. And I think that, yes, there, to some degree, there's limiting beliefs. You have that set of imposter syndrome. I had this for a long time early in my career, where it's like, oh my gosh, I've got to work my ass off because, like I felt truly like an imposter. It's like, I don't want to be found out. But it was also, like this sense of like schizophrenic paranoia, where it's like, am I qualified to be the one leading this project or like coming up with these ideas? I don't have a ton of experience. And I think one, you've got to figure out how to transform into the like a different mind space, headspace, where it's like, hell yeah, I'm the one who's here doing it. And so that makes me, by virtue of being the one who's here and putting in the time and work, I am qualified to be the one doing that. And I don't see anybody else here like trying to tackle this project.
Yeah,
I'm the one who's qualified to do it. You got to tackle the limiting beliefs. Number two, and this is, you are going to encounter this. If you are a young person who is trying to, reach some type of accelerated growth, like I was mentioning, like you will reach a level, you will encounter a set of resistance from other people. For me, in an early career, being someone who was the youngest person on an executive team by probably 10 years early on, like I hit a glass ceiling very high in my very, very early on in my career, if you will, where it was like, in order for me to break that glass ceiling, there's honestly nothing that I can do except have 10 more years of experience than I do, because, like I was working in a very, like in the finance space, where it's like, there's more regulations. It was a VC thing where you got like institutional investors who are like, I'm not going to let some kid, have any type of major leadership role in a company where, that's valued at eight to nine figure, like depending on where we're at. And and you are going to encounter that. And I think that whether it's inside an actual organization, like, trying to be the young kid who's a VP or, C-level executive or whatever, or even if you're like going and trying to start your own thing and you're like going to a bank to get a loan, or you're trying to pitch investors, there's always going to be that old way of thinking where it's like, show me your track record. And when you're young, you don't have a ton of track record. A lot of times you're trying to convince somebody to bet on you and bet on your hustle and bet on your own like chip on your shoulder. And so you got to find a way to combat that, where you don't become crazy and feel crazy for trying to do something out of order. But, you got to just keep hustling. And, at the end of the day, it may mean you need to plant yourself in different soil, but don't stop pushing just because other people tell you that, you're being impatient.
Absolutely, bro. And sometimes it's hard to quantify that, man. Like if you have a chip on your shoulder, if you have like that desire to do better, like you said, you don't got the track record, bro. Like you know how it is. You go to a bank, they'll give you $100,000 student loan, but you want to open up a business, it's
Nope.
like, who the hell do you think you are? It's a complete like radical 360. Whew, that was a lot of information. Yeah, but to summarize, I guess what is one if any anybody listening to this podcast, what is one piece of advice? This is like the golden nugget
Yep.
that if you're 19 years old, flashback decade back, you're 19 years old, you're about to turn 20. What's one piece of wisdom you would give them?
Yeah. Far and away, like regardless of whether you have it figured out what you want to do or not, go find somebody who's doing what you think you want to do today and who's years ahead of you. Preferably like find somebody who's like 10, 15 plus years ahead of you in your career. You want to start a business, go find somebody who started the kind of business you're interested in today. Like go find a, local small business owner who's trying to build an empire. Go find like the early stage founder.
Yep.
You want to be a writer, go find a writer, go, whatever it is you're interested in today, the path that you feel like you want to go down, find the person who's doing it and doing it the way that like the person who it's like, I want to be that person. I want to be who they are. If 10 years from now, I'm living out what they're living out, like I'm going to be proud of myself. Go find that person and be valuable to them. And they're going to pave the way for you and your career. You're going to learn so much. But just put yourself in service to them and help them realize their dreams, because eventually it is going to be your turn. But you got to go learn learn the fundamentals of your craft. You got to go and get some experience. You got to go cut your teeth in a new field to build up the confidence and break out of that imposter syndrome. And plus, it's going to be a lot cheaper than you like trying to go do it on your own, to actually have somebody who can guide you and that can pour into you early on in your career.
Absolutely. Like almost like almost like that's like your foundation, like the foundation of the home, right? After that, you could go on, you could tackle the world after. One thing, like I said, I'm only 40% there, but one thing that resonates with me a lot is the compounding effect. I love that piece of advice, man. I think that's huge. If you could do it for 10 years, the same principle and just doing it every day, that's freaking huge. And competence, like you said, just build that competence, build that foundation.
Yep, man. I like to think of it as, just quick word picture here as we're signing off here. I like to think about it as a snowball rolling down the hill. When it's first, it's just this tiny little pile of snow. But as you go further down, like, your 20s, you're just a little snowball. But as you go, roll down the hill a little bit more, you do it right for those first 10 years of your career. Like it's going to pick up speed and volume and velocity as you gain more momentum and as you go downhill. So that's the power of compounding applied to your career. How to tackle your 20s, go out. Find somebody that you can learn from, go out and give it your all, but don't aim at the wrong target. So this has been another episode of The Deliberate Dropout. Thanks for listening. As always, drop us a comment below if you're listening on YouTube, watching on YouTube. If you're listening on any of your other favorite Spotify podcast players, find us, The Deliberate Dropout. Leave us a 5-star review, comments about this episode or the show, any recommendations for future topics, and we will be back again with another episode. As always, thanks for listening.